Hello, everyone, and welcome to Healthy at Work. My name is Catherine Wilcox, a workplace health specialist with a big passion for helping people thrive at work. From the home office to the corporate office, from the assembly line to the front line, I've got you covered here for your healthiest life at work. Now let's dive into today's show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healthy at Work. My name is Catherine. I'm your host, and today we're going to be tackling workload. Now, workload is one of the psychosocial risk factors under the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. What does that mean? Well, it means that it is one of the things that we know can lead people to become psychologically harmed at work if it's not managed well. We also know that employers and leaders have important responsibilities around supporting workers with their workload. And today I'm also going to be diving into things that you can do as an individual worker to support yourself if you're noticing that you're drowning under a sea of work. Now, when it comes to managing workload, there are three different buckets of strategies, approaches, interventions that we might consider in looking at how to improve workload management. And so the first bucket has to do with decreasing demands. So basic math here, right? You have a lot of work to do. It is excessive, it's stressful, it's difficult to manage. Can we remove some of those demands? So can we take some of the tasks that you're doing and give them to someone else? Can those tasks be eliminated completely if they're not adding value in the workplace? Can we consider removing some of these demands? The other consideration, other bucket of strategies and interventions that we might use are increasing the resources available to you to meet those demands. So could that mean giving you some help and assistance some way? Does it mean that you might hire more staff to do the work that's been assigned to you, specifically? Does it mean that we might consider using AI to do some of the tasks that again could be handled in a more automated way? Are there efficiencies that we can gain, for example, by taking some of the tasks of your work and finding more efficient ways to do them? So, this idea of increasing resources, training could be another example. Maybe if you received, a specialized training, it might help you do tasks in a different way, a more efficient way, a better way. So, can we increase resources to meet demands? This sometimes looks as well like better supporting people in the workplace. So providing more energetic resources, emotional resources, well-being resources to help support people with their resiliency, for example, to meet the demands of their work. That's another consideration as well. The other and final category of interventions we'll be looking at today is control. So, can we give workers more control over how the work gets done? Why is this important? Well, some of us might do better if we are able to work during the hours that we know we have the most energy and can be most productive. Some of us, have energy early in the day. If we assign certain tasks or decide that's when I'm going to see clients or that's when I'm going to, focus on report writing, we have much better output. Others, we might not come alive energetically until later in the day. So can we give workers control over certain aspects of their work? Will that help them manage workload? Will it help them batch certain tasks together, for example? Have their meetings at a certain time or deal with administrative tasks at a certain time, rather than, having that type of control, happen from their leader or from, a different protocol. So thinking about giving workers increased control in the workplace as well. So these are some of the categories or strategies of intervention we might use in managing workload. And I wanted to break this down a little bit further to make it more practically helpful to those that might be listening or watching. So what are some of the things that that we might consider doing, knowing again, our leaders, our organization has responsibility here as well in terms of designing work so that it's reasonable. And if that's not the situation you find yourself in, maybe you are really struggling with workload, and this has been longstanding in the role that you hold. What is it that you can do to personally empower yourself? So we're going to talk about how to have conversations about workload today, and then I'll share some other strategies as well that may or may not be supportive to you. It really depends on your unique situation. The first thing I would encourage people to think about if they're trying to better manage their workload is to think about that bucket of interventions we talked about around control. So, when you look at how the work gets done, how much control do you have over that in your specific role and position? Now, some of us have roles with great flexibility. Maybe we do have more control. I appreciate that there may be folks listening that work in industries where, you have less of that. For example, if you work in an emergency room, if you work as a first responder, if you work in manufacturing, for example, you may need to do work in a very precise and prescribed way. Because there's standards and that's the nature of your job. So this may or may not apply to you. But if you do have some flexibility or can negotiate that with your employer, take a look at how your workday is set up and how you currently manage your workload. Are you finding that you are constantly putting out fires, for example? So are you in responsive mode? So are you responding, to emails as they come in all day, every day? Do you have the ability to look at tasks that you do on a daily basis and batch them together or gather them together in a way that would be helpful and supportive to you, that would help you work a bit more efficiently and work best? There's, a lot of great tools and resources out there that help us consider how to be optimally, productive in terms of managing our schedule and our time and our energy. So, looking at that, one thing that I've personally found really helpful is ensuring that I have time set aside for, what we could call focus time or deep work time. And that's where, for example, I need to do my best cognitive thinking. I need to be creative. I need to produce original ideas and content. So, so having uninterrupted time to do that is really helpful. And during that time, I'm not looking at email, I'm not taking phone calls. I'm trying as much as possible to focus my time and energy and attention into that single task. So, do you have blocks of time like that in your own work day or work week, depending on what your role is, where you can begin to give some thoughtful preparation to how you're going to get your work done? And that can mean setting up your schedule, assigning time for certain tasks and deep work, planning out what needs to be done. There's a lot of different systems out there that you can use and make use of to again make work better for you, depending on who you are, what you do, and how you prefer to work. Managing distractions. This is a big one for many of us, right? Many of us are, tied to devices in the work that we do. And even if we're not, the temptation, on our breaks, for example, of just, popping open our email and dealing with a few things or responding to a few text messages is right there. And so um, our devices and our attention management can really support us in better managing our workload by just trying to manage distractions and interruptions. So every time, we are on one course of work, dealing with one task, and that attention gets interrupted, our brain needs to reset. We need to refocus and come back into it again. And we know it's not the most efficient way of working, that we can lose a lot of time to that. So some people find, strategies around managing things like notifications, managing, our devices by putting them in another room, if we are able to do that. Some of us aren't, right? Because we need to be on standby, or we use our phones for work. But, consider some of those things as well around, like, how can I eliminate some of the distractions that, pull on my productivity? Do we need to meet? I love I love talking about this. So if, in the nature of your work, you, attend a lot of meetings, there's a lot of great guidance out there as well around how to determine whether something actually needs to be a meeting or whether it can be done via a phone call or via email. So meetings can take up a lot of time, and if there's not a clear agenda or if we're not there to make a decision, or if the purpose of the meeting isn't clear, sometimes it can be helpful to really look at and examine whether we need to meet at all, or whether, the goal of the meeting is to, provide connection, which is might be a worthy goal to continue to meet, whether it's to share information. And so maybe that's the best way of getting the information out. Maybe not. Maybe it, can be disseminated in an email. Really being thoughtful about the meetings that we attend and accept, and when we're setting, meeting invites too, just really thinking about that. Is there some other way of, getting the goal of this meeting accomplished, or do we really need to meet? That's something that can save us some time, depending on, again, how and when we work. I also think learning to talk about workload can be a really important support to us if we're struggling in our own working life around this. So, ideally, leaders should be leading the conversation around workload by checking in with the people that report to them, by having a good handle on the work that needs to be accomplished and how that can be done in a way that works best for workers and meets the needs of the business as well. So, ideally, our leaders are checking in around this. Some of us might not have leaders that are checking in around this, or we might not have a lot of time to have conversations with our leaders about workload because they may have 50, 60, over 100 direct reports in some industries. So, how can we be proactive and find ways of talking about workload? So, I wanted to share some ideas of how we can have conversations and how we can do that in a way that demonstrates, our desire to take a problem solving approach, right? And I think that can be really helpful and can increase the chances that we'll actually be heard, and that we'll actually, get what we need out of these conversations if, again, we're able to present our concerns about workload in a constructive way. So, I just wanted to offer some ideas of language to use if you are responding to a request from your leader, if you're wanting to bring up this idea of how do I have a conversation of about my workload and how can I do this in a way that's constructive. So, some ideas of how to do that would be to really emphasize the importance of quality. So sometimes our leaders will assign us work and we know we actually can't give it our best because of all the other priorities on our plates. So one of the things we might try saying is something like, this project needs my full attention, or this sounds like a really important initiative. And, from there, we've acknowledged, yes, this is a priority. This is important. We're not trying to diminish the fact that it needs to get done. You might be able to say something like, I want to do this well. So, what can I set aside so I can give this my full attention? The other thing that can be helpful is sharing and making visible to our leaders and our employers all of the tasks that we're currently working on. Sometimes that's not known, or our leaders might not have a great line of sight into all of the things that we do in the course of the day. So, if we are able to inventory that somehow, or sometimes that's it's also about reminding our leaders. So right now I'm working on these priorities, XYZ, and this is what I'm focused on. It sounds like this is important too. Can you help me understand what you'd like me to focus or where you'd like me to focus in the next while? So, something to try, right? If you're noticing that you're getting assigned more and more projects and you're not sure where the area of focus is. It's also important to be able to signal and let our leaders know that when we're at capacity, right? When we actually can't fit it in. And I know sometimes people are concerned about being direct around that because the fear is I won't be seen as a team player. I'll be seen as uncooperative, not contributing, not wanting to dive in and help the team. So, again, when we focus on things like quality and wanting to do it well, wanting to give it your full attention, acknowledging the importance of the task, and then add that and my plate is incredibly full right now. And then also being able to find a way to say yes. And it might be, and I really would love to support this. And I can, have capacity, or I see that I'll have capacity to do that. And it might be a bit down the road, right? Depending on what you're working on, in a couple weeks' time or next month. So in this way, you're signaling to the person, I might need to push this out a bit. I'm on board. I want to help. I want to be supportive. I'm at capacity and I could see an opening for this at this time, right? So just another way or just some ideas about language that we can use if we're trying to signal, that we don't have the capacity based on other things we're working on, and yet maybe down the road. The other thing we can do with that is share how we can contribute in part. So we might not be able to do the whole thing, but another and that's great to add there is, and perhaps I could get this started, or I'd be willing to share my ideas. Or share how to initiate the project. If there's a part of it that you can take on, sometimes, that can be a way we could signal, I'm on this team, I care, I'm on board. And it is also true that my plate is really full right now. The final reminder I just wanted to give or offering to you as you think about navigating conversations about workload is, coming back to this idea of priorities and what is priority. And I really love reminding myself and others that the word priority means most important thing. And so we can't have 20 most important things. That doesn't, you know, pass the test of reason. So we can't have 20 priorities. Um, and that's where we might be forced to make some hard decisions or to have some hard conversations too with our leaders around really defining what is the most important thing. Knowing we are humans, we have limited capacity and time and attention and focus. And, sometimes as we move to kind of get clear around, well, what is the most important thing? In my work, in my life, even that allows us to, let go of the things that we're doing that are not adding value in the work that we're doing. So I hope this was a helpful conversation today. Encourage you to, again, think about your own individual situation and always encourage people to seek more individualized, support and guidance by reaching out to the supports that you feel safe accessing inside your workplace or outside of it as well. And we'll see you back here next time. Thanks for listening today. Bye. Thanks for listening today. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not medical advice or mental health treatment. If you're struggling at work, please reach out to the supports within your workplace or community. This podcast was gratefully recorded on the unceded and ancestral homelands of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations.